Girl waves at cop every day. The day she doesn't, his gut tells him to check her house. Clint Scales' family life was anything but simple. Growing up in the 1990s in Kansas City, Missouri, with her mother and two brothers, the family was always fighting to make ends meet. Her mother put in a lot of effort to support the family, but it never seemed to be enough. Thankfully, there was one part of Quinn's day that she always looked forward to: the chance to wave to her favorite police officer who was on duty every day on their block. Klein was able to forget about her problems and feel loved in that brief time. However, everything changed one day. The police officer waited for Clint for their customary greeting one afternoon, but she never showed up. It was the first time she had failed to show up for their daily session, and he sensed something was seriously wrong. What follows will astound you. The Scales family was going through a difficult time. Quinn, who was just 9 years old at the time, watched as her mother did everything she could to provide for her family, but it wasn't enough. It constantly appeared as if the universe was against them, and every step forward was followed by 3 steps back. It didn't help that they were also in a dangerous Kansas City neighborhood. Violence was commonplace and drugs were readily available on the streets. It was a difficult environment to live, and it wasn't ideal for a child. Clint had to go to bed hungry on numerous occasions due to a lack of funds for a healthy meal. Her mother's decision to take a dark road didn't help matters. Quinn's mother went to drugs because she was tired of struggling, and the violence they had worked so hard to keep out of their home was now contaminating it. Quinn found herself in the position of needing to be a mother and care for her brothers. Fortunately, despite his misery and anguish, Flynn was able to find comfort in one person. Given the environment she lived in and her background, she never anticipated someone to care, but it was a pleasant surprise that would have an impact on her life. Officer Colvin had to keep hyper alert during his patrols because the neighborhood he worked in was notorious for shady business operations and a high crime rate. He never knew when he'd end up in an unexpected position. Colvin came upon a young girl in a neighborhood he patrolled one day. He smiled at her and he could see a grin in her eyes. She returned the wave. Colvin knew the youngsters in the neighborhood had things tough, so he made the gesture. He had no idea, though, that one wave would turn into something so much bigger. Colvin and Quinn would meet in the same area over the next few weeks, and he would wave while she smiled. For the girl and officer, it became a daily routine. He had no idea he was bringing her so much delight because of her difficult home life. With the passage of time, Coleman and Quinn began to form a bond. They discussed the weather, her day, as well as their dreams, objectives, and ambitions. Quinn, on the other hand, was keeping a secret. Quinn was struggling despite the fact that she appeared to be a cheerful little girl. Her mother's illness and absence from her life worsened. The young girl was compelled to step up and take on the role of family grown-up. Quinn had to make sure she didn't forget how difficult her life was with her mother rarely home. Quinn understood that stealing was wrong, but she didn't have any other options. She and her siblings had gone days without food far too many times, and she refused to let them go hungry again. Officer Coleman was the only person Quinn could rely on in her life. He would show up at their location every day, and he became a role model and significant figure in her life. However, everything changed one day. Coleman arrived at the location where he met Quinn one lovely afternoon to discover her gone. She had never missed on one of their regular get-togethers, so he was taken aback when she suddenly vanished. He'd grown attached to the child and was concerned that something happened. Coleman decided to go over to Quinn's place to see how she was doing. He'd followed her home once before to make sure he was safe, so he knew precisely where she was. When he knocked on the door, however, no one replied, but suddenly he heard a sign movement. Coleman had a bad gut feeling that something wasn't right. Even though he wasn't in the habit of breaking into people's homes, after making his way inside, he discovered Quinn, who was pale and shivering, lying on the floor. When he realized she was in serious trouble, he called in support. Quinn was brought to the hospital and diagnosed with severe malnutrition. Coleman had saved her life by locating her, according to the physicians, because she wouldn't have survived another day without treatment. What an honor it is to be a guardian angel. Throughout all the difficult times, Quinn would remember his stating that he was there for them and that if they ever needed him, he would be right there. He was always there to protect them. Thus, those words came to him from the darkest of days of his youth. With the passage of time, Coleman would eventually leave the area after saving Quinn. He had shown her enormous kindness and she'd never forget it. He'd given her a second chance at life when she was 9 years old. Glenn remarked that she was the one person in his life who she trusted as a kid. She knew she had to find him after thinking about him for 20 years. Quinn wanted to thank him in person despite the passage of time. Regrettably, after all that time, Quinn had forgotten his name. As a result, she hopped onto Facebook and began searching the Kansas City Police Department's page in hopes of spotting him. Fortunately, she was able to contact Sergeant Jennifer Jones, who agreed to contact Officer Coleman on his behalf. Jones emailed Coleman claiming that a woman claimed to be a little girl he'd helped years before and was looking for the cop she'd waved to every day. Coleman was taken aback when he remembered Quinn, to say the least. Despite the fact that it had been 20 years, he instantly recognized her. He often thought about her and wondered what happened to her. Coleman informed the local reporters that he'd always wondered. It was unexpected to reconnect after all these years. Jones put Coleman in touch with Clan after Coleman confirmed he knew the girl. The now adult woman was overjoyed to have reconnected with a man who had such a profound impact on her. She revealed that she'd just never dreamed this would happen. Coleman was overcome with emotion after meeting with Quinn. He remarked that most of the time, we go through our careers without realizing how much we've helped others. That was her experience, and she began to question whether she was on the correct career path. Thankfully, his friendship with Quinn confirmed he'd made the right decision. Quinn acknowledged that Coleman sparing her life had a significant impact on her life decisions. She was able to reclaim her life, free her brothers from their drug-addicted mother, and start a new life for herself. She was now pursuing a career as a police officer, wanting to have the same impact on others that Coleman had on her. Quinn published her experience on social media after meeting with Coleman, and it quickly went viral, gaining a lot of support for her and Coleman. Coleman's selfishness and kindness were praised, while Quinn was praised for rising above her surroundings. Jeff Quinn is not just a hero but a guardian angel. He was there when I didn't have anyone else. She wanted him to know, as well as every other police officer, that whatever you do, no matter how big or small, may have a positive impact on someone's life, just as it did mine. Quinn, we believe, will go on to accomplish great things. It's remarkable how much a simple grin and a wave can accomplish. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.